Russian soldiers just surrendered to a robot. Not a drone operator watching from miles away. Not a remote-controlled weapon with a human pulling the trigger. An autonomous robot with a machine gun powered by artificial intelligence, forcing enemy combatants to their knees with their hands in the air. This happened on January 27, 2026, in active combat on the Ukrainian front lines. It is the first documented case in human history of soldiers surrendering to a machine. And while the world processes what that means for the future of warfare, another study dropped this week that should make every developer uncomfortable. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, just published research showing that developers who rely on AI coding tools score 17% lower on comprehension tests. Today, we're looking at what happens when machines start doing our jobs, whether that's fighting wars or writing code. On January 27th, the Ukrainian 3rd Separate Assault Brigade deployed a ground robot called the droid TW-7.62 in the Lyman direction of the front lines. This isn't your typical military hardware. It's a reconnaissance strike platform built by Ukrainian defense company DevDroid, roughly the size of a washing machine, equipped with a PKT machine gun, and here's the critical part, an AI-powered targeting system that can autonomously detect, track, and engage targets without direct human control. The footage released shows 3 Russian soldiers in white winter camouflage, lying on snow-covered ground. The robot advances toward them. The soldiers stand up cautiously, one visibly injured and covered in blood, and raise their hands in surrender. They walk toward the machine, not knowing if it will shoot them or spare them. Ukraine now has over 200 different models of ground robots in active service, produced by 40 domestic defense companies. The droid TW was originally developed to evacuate wounded soldiers under fire, minimizing human exposure to danger. But as this footage proves, the military found another use for it entirely. This isn't just a cool piece of war footage. This is a threshold moment. We've had drones for decades. We've had remote-controlled weapons. But those always had a human making the kill decision. A person watching a screen, choosing to pull the trigger. What happened in Ukraine is fundamentally different. An autonomous system, using AI to identify enemy combatants, forced human soldiers to surrender. The machine made the tactical decisions. The machine created the psychological pressure, and the humans capitulated to it. Think about what that means for the calculus of modern warfare. If one side can deploy hundreds of cheap AI-powered ground robots that don't get tired, don't feel fear, don't hesitate, what does that do to the soldiers on the other side? The psychological impact alone changes everything. You're not fighting a person. You're fighting a machine that might spare you, or might not, and you have no idea which. Watch for 2 things. First, how quickly other nations scramble to develop or acquire similar autonomous ground systems. This technology just proved itself in combat. Expect a proliferation race. Second, watch the regulatory and ethical debates. The international community has been discussing autonomous weapons for years without reaching consensus. This footage might force that conversation into urgency. When soldiers are surrendering to robots on camera, the theoretical becomes impossible to ignore. Autonomous weapons taking over human decision-making on the battlefield. That's one kind of machine replacement to worry about. But there's another happening right now that's far more personal for anyone in tech. What happens when AI starts doing your job so well that you forget how to do it yourself? Anthropic just gave us some uncomfortable data on exactly that question. On January 29th, Anthropic, the San Francisco-based AI safety company that builds Claude, published new research examining how AI coding assistance affects developers' skill development. The headline finding from their randomized controlled trial: developers who rely on AI assistance to write code score 17% lower on comprehension tests than those who code manually. 17%. That's not a rounding error. The study specifically looked at what happens when developers use AI pair programming tools versus writing code themselves, measuring their ability to understand and reason about the code afterward. But here's what makes this research particularly credible and uncomfortable. Anthropic isn't some outside critic. They make Claude. They make Claude. They make Claude code. The head of Claude Code, Boris Cherny, recently admitted he hasn't personally written any code in over 2 months. 100% of his code is now AI generated. Across Anthropic, nearly all code is now written by AI. And their internal research found employees using Claude for almost 60% of their work reported a 50% productivity gain. So they're seeing the benefits firsthand. But they're also seeing the warning signs. The researchers identified something they call the paradox of supervision. Effectively using Claude requires supervision. You need to review what the AI produces, catch its mistakes, understand what it's actually doing. But supervising Claude requires the very coding skills that may atrophy from AI overuse. See the problem. The more you rely on AI, the less capable you become of checking whether the AI is doing something stupid or dangerous. And there's another layer: incidental learning. When you debug code yourself, you spend time reading documentation, exploring how systems work, building mental models. AI gets you to the solution immediately, but you skip all that learning along the way. For junior developers, this is especially concerning. The grunt work that traditionally trained the next generation of senior engineers is disappearing. If AI writes 90% of the code, where do tomorrow's architects come from? Major platforms including Claude and ChatGPT have already started introducing learning modes designed to preserve skill development. Acknowledging this problem is real. Expect more tools to follow. Also watch hiring practices. Anthropic's team now hires mostly generalists rather than specialists, since many traditional programming skills matter less when AI handles implementation. The question isn't whether AI coding tools will dominate. They already do. The question is whether we're building a generation of developers who can't function without them. Robots that can force human surrender. AI tools that erode the skills needed to check their work. We're living through the moment when machines cross from augmentation to replacement, in ways we're only beginning to understand. The question worth asking yourself: what are you delegating to AI, and what are you deliberately keeping for yourself? If you want to stay informed on these developments as they unfold, subscribe. We cover AI and tech news daily. See you in the next one.